are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, December 6th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat. If you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast, it makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We will recap last night's game between the Packers and the Lions. The Lions improving to 12-1 on the season with a 34-31 victory over the Packers. Game-winning field goal by Jake Bates. So we'll get into that in just a second. Then in the second part of the show, we will talk about Kirk Cousins' return to Minnesota. The Falcons and the Vikings will be playing against each other on Sunday, so I'll preview that matchup. We'll also talk about one of the games in the late window, the Rams and the Bills, and the implications that that game has. And then we'll take a look in the fourth and fifth parts of the show. We'll take a look at the championship games in college football, conference championship games. We'll take a look at them. I'll give you my picks for some of those games. We'll also take a look at the rest of the games from the Week 14 slate in the NFL. So, yeah, that's kind of the rundown for the show today. And, of course, you know, my camera has to give me problems. It was giving me problems before I went live, but of course now it has trickled in, so just bear with me as I try to fix that. But anyways, that's the rundown for the show today, so let's get into the first topic, which is talking about last night's game between the Lions and the Packers. So it was a very good game, and probably going to be the best game of the week, which I don't think is a surprise, and that's what I said going into the game yesterday, that you know, looking at the slate's not that great. Again, there's a couple of games that I wanted to focus on. And, you know, there's also the Sunday night game between the Chargers and the Chiefs. That, you know, could be interesting. But it's kind of a lackluster slate for this week. And this is the last week of bye weeks. Bye weeks have been taking forever. So, you know, then that's when we really start to get into the end of the regular season and, you know, find out who's making the playoffs as we ramp up. But this game last night was a lot of fun. And, of course, the Lions, you know, they got the win because all they do is win. They have not lost since, I believe it was week 2 against the Bucs. They just keep winning. And, you know, there were a couple of times where you thought, okay, you know, maybe this might be the game where they fall. But it ended up not happening. They won on a Jake Bates game-winning field goal, and they improved to 12-1 on the season. The Packers dropped to 9-4, and how the game started, they went right down the field on their first drive. They went 11 plays, 70 yards, and that led to a David Montgomery touchdown from 3 yards out. And then, you know, there were a lot of punts in the first quarter. The Packers had a quick drive on their first possession. And, you know, I thought the defense did a good job at, you know, holding the Lions down in the beginning. But the Packers really couldn't get anything going. They were struggling to, you know, find rhythm on offense. And, you know, the Lions, they were coming in shorthanded. They were missing a lot of guys on defense. And, you know what? The defense did step up and play well last night. And things got chippy during the game. There were a couple times where, you know, the teams had to be separated. Nothing too crazy. Quay Walker had a penalty at one point. But, other than that, there was no huge brawls like we saw, this past weekend. So, yeah, the Packers, though, in the beginning, they did struggle to move the ball, like I said. But, and the other thing, too, is the Lions, after their first drive, it took some time before they scored again. But then it looked like the Packers were getting something going. So, Jordan Love completed a pass to Christian Watson, and he ended up fumbling, and that led to a field goal by the Lions. So that made it 10-0. 43-yard field goal by Jake Bates. Then the Packers, on their next drive, they went 11 plays, 70 yards down the field, and that eventually led to a Josh Jacobs 1-yard touchdown. And it was set up because there was on 3rd and goal, there was an interception, but there was a pass interference call, so that put him at the 1, and Josh Jacobs scored. And that was his first touchdown of the night, and he ended up scoring a couple of more after that. Might have had a 4th one, but it got called back for an offensive pass interference. So it was 10-7, but then the Lions responded with the touchdown drive. Goff connected with Jahmyr Gibbs on 4th and goal. It was a great play call, and that made it 17-7, and that's what we went into the half with. So then the Packers came out, put together a 5-play, 70-yard drive. You had a 59-yard reception by Christian Watson, and then later in the drive, Jordan Love threaded the needle, fired a fastball to Tucker Kraft for a 12-yard touchdown, so that made it 17-14. And then Jared Goff actually threw a pick. So then the Packers scored a touchdown off of that. That was Josh Jacobs' second rushing touchdown. And then the Lions responded with a touchdown drive of their own. Another 4th and goal. Tim Patrick, a 3-yard touchdown. He had a big game last night. So a couple of 4th and goals the Lions went for, and they ended up cashing in, getting touchdowns on them. Packers then punted. And this is where I thought, the Lions might lose this game. Well, the interception also off of Jared Goff. That was one moment. But this moment here. So the Lions actually went for it on 4th and 1 at their own 31-yard line. And, they didn't run it up the middle. They did a pitch to Jahmyr Gibbs, and he ends up getting tackled short of the line of gain. And the Packers immediately turned that into a touchdown. Another Josh Jacobs touchdown from 4 yards out. So that made it 28-24. Then the Lions responded, though. They go down the field, 10 plays, 70 yards, and that led to another Tim Patrick touchdown on 3rd and goal. Packers then went down the field. They went 9 plays, 56 yards. He had a 29-yard reception by Christian Watson on 2nd and 14. Then another 26 to Dontavian Wicks. Brian Branch actually got banged up in this game. You don't want to lose him. But on 2nd and goal from the line 6, I immediately knew there was going to be a penalty on the Packers. Josh Jacobs scores a 6-yard touchdown reception, but it gets called back for offensive pass interference on Christian Watson. So they had to settle for a McManus 32-yard field goal. And then, the Lions got into field goal range. They did go for it on 4th down. They went for it on 4th and 1. Montgomery picked up 7 yards. And then Jake Bates kicked the 35-yard field goal. And that was it. The Lions won 34-31. What I will say, though, now, look, the Lions are they're the best team right now. Now, I know I talked about some other teams that maybe could knock them off, like the Eagles, but this is the best team right now in the NFL. What I will say is, and Kurt Herbstreit mentioned it on the broadcast, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? And that is going for it on 4th down. Now, fortunately, the Lions did win this game, and there were a couple of 4th and goals that they went for, and they cashed in and got touchdowns off of it. But for Dan Campbell, this is what got him in trouble last year in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. You kept going for it instead of taking the points, and you ended up losing the game and losing a lead because of that. So, now there were other things that happened in the game besides them, but going for it on 4th down did play a role in why the Lions didn't win the NFC Championship game. And they're fortunate that they won this game. Going for it on 4th down from your own 31, it's a huge gamble. And, this is kind of what got, Brandon Staley fired, because he was aggressive too with the Chargers. We loved it at the start, but then, at a certain point, you're like, all right, maybe you should take the points. Maybe you should punt. And, it cost your team games. The Packers immediately scored 7 off of that. And, had they not have gone for it and let the Packers try to go the length of the field, maybe the game is not coming down to a game-winning field goal by Jake Bates. Maybe you win by a score or two. So, yeah, it just that's one problem I have. But they're going to continue to do that. And that's what the Lions, that's what they do. That's what Dan Campbell does. And I respect it. I mean, he still is a heck of a coach. I mean, I know I brought up Brandon Staley, but Dan Campbell brought his team to an NFC Championship game last year. And now this team is well on their way to maybe, being the 1 seed in the NFC. And, the playoffs are going to have to go through Detroit. So, he's been more successful. But it's just, that could lead to your downfall. Being overly aggressive could lead to your downfall. But to Green Bay, though, they struggled to stop the Lions at times. In the beginning, they were doing a good job at, holding them down in the first quarter. But then the Lions offense started to wake up. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a quiet day. But Tim Patrick, he had a good performance yesterday. Of course, the 2 running backs, Sonic and Knuckles, they continue to produce. Tim Patrick on the day, he finished with 80. That's Jamison Williams. Tim Patrick had 6 receptions for 43 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. Jamison Williams had 5 receptions for 80 yards. Sam Laporta, 5 for 54. Amon-Ra St. Brown, only 5 for 43. Montgomery had 5 for 33. Jahmyr Gibbs had a receiving touchdown, 6 for 30. The Lions' defense had 1 sack on the day of Jordan Love. They were making it hard for Jordan Love back there. There was one play, I think it was towards the end of the game, where it looked like Jordan Love was going to get sacked, but he was able to evade it and hit Christian Watson. That was the drive to set up the game-tying field goal. But yeah, no, in the beginning it was tough. I mean, the first play, Jordan Love got sacked. But yeah, Jared Goff, 32 of 41, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Montgomery had 51 yards rushing on the ground and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs had 43 yards on the ground. For the Packers, Jordan Love only went 12 of 20 for 206 yards and a touchdown. Played better in the second half. Josh Jacobs only 66 yards on the ground, but he did have 3 touchdowns. Christian Watson had a big game, 4 receptions for 114 yards. Dontavian Wicks had 4 for 49. Tucker Kraft 3 for 41 and a touchdown. Jaden Reed, now, he was on the St. Brown podcast, and he said, something about, when he goes to Detroit, what he's going to do. Had 1 target, was a non-factor in this game, which I was a little surprised about. I would have thought he would have had more of a role, but really didn't. Christian Watson had a big game, like I said, and they were still missing Romeo Doubs. So hopefully they get him back for this game coming up next week in Seattle, which is a house of horrors for the Packers. So we'll see how that goes. But Christian Watson had a fumble in this game. Keyshawn Nixon had the pick off of Jared Goff that set up one of the touchdown drives. Packers defense only 1 sack in the game. But, it was a fun game. The best game of the week. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be topped. We'll see. But, the Lions, they're in the driver's seat. Packers will still make the playoffs, in my opinion. I think there's still some things they got to clean up, but they're going to be in the playoffs. The Lions, they look like they're going to win yet another division title and most likely get the 1 seed. Now, next week could be the game of the year when they take on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills will be going to Ford Field, so that should be a great game. Looking forward to that. But they can continue to find ways to win and get the job done. And hopefully they start to get guys back, they get healthier, and they'll be ready to roll come playoff time. But their offense, is still rolling. The defense is where they got to get healthy. But as long as you got all your guys healthy on offense, you could put up points with anybody, and that's, what they've done. But I'm excited for next week's game with the Bills. That should be a very interesting game. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will talk about Kirk Cousins and his return to the Vikings. And I will preview that game and how I think that game will unfold. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about Kirk Cousins and his return to Minnesota to take on his former team, the Minnesota Vikings, and this is coming off of a performance that was by far his worst of the year. No touchdowns, 4 interceptions against the Chargers. Falcons end up losing that game 17-13, and they are now tied on top of the NFC South with the Buccaneers, who are starting to get healthy. So this is a big game for the Falcons. I mean, this is also a big game for the Vikings as well, because they're trying to keep pace with the Lions for the NFC North. You know, they still got a chance at that. Vikings coming off of that comeback win against the Cardinals. You know, since that start, you know, they're still a good team, but they were kind of playing over their heads a little bit. But look, they're still 10-2, and you know, this is going to be a dangerous team come playoff time. But you know, they got some tough games remaining on the schedule. You know, I still look at this game as tough for them, but I kind of lean towards the Vikings in this matchup. You got the Bears coming up again at home, the Seahawks in Seattle. That's a tough place to play. You got the Packers at home, and then you're at the Lions, and that could decide who wins the division. So, you know, the Vikings got to keep winning games to keep up with the Lions, to at least have a shot to win the division at the end of the year. But looking at this game, though, I mean, the Falcons have really struggled. Mainly Kirk Cousins has struggled. And I went through his stats over the course of the last few games. He has not thrown a touchdown pass since November 3rd against the Cowboys. That was a month ago. He hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in a month. I mean, that's unbelievable. Since then, his last 3 games, no touchdowns to 6 picks. And the Falcons have been such a weird team, because there'll be a game where it looks like they figured it out. You know, and you're like, okay, all right, this is where Kirk Cousins gets it going. You know, still trying to shake off the rust from the Achilles injury. And then all of a sudden, he puts a performance together like that against the Chargers, or against the Seahawks, where he had, you know, a few turnovers in that game, and they lost by 3 scores. He's been inconsistent, but now he's been consistent, and by consistent, he's been consistently poor with how he's played, and it's kind of led to some people calling for Michael Penix to get a shot, and I want to see what happens at the end of the year, because, you know, you still owe Kirk Cousins a lot of money. You still got 3 years left on that contract, but it's possible that maybe he ends up getting traded and the Michael Penix era begins next year for the Falcons. I mean, I think it all depends on how this season ends. If they end up missing the playoffs and Kirk Cousins continues on this downward trajectory, then I think we will see Michael Penix. But, you know, if Kirk Cousins finds a way to bounce back, like if he went into Minnesota and he beats the Vikings and he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, I mean, that definitely would drop people back a little bit on the Michael Penix talk. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to continue to struggle. He has not played well on the road this year, other than, you know, against his divisional opponents. Well, not the Saints, but against the Bucs and the Panthers. He has not played well on the road this year. And, well, he also had that game-winning drive against the Eagles as well. But if Saquon doesn't drop that pass and that game ends. But recently, against the Broncos, that was not good. The Saints, that was not a good performance either. So, and now you're going up against a 10-win team in the Vikings, and that defense knows Kirk Cousins. That team knows how to play against him. They went up against him in practice all the time, so they know what his strengths and weaknesses are. And he doesn't have the supporting cast like he had in Minnesota. Now, I'm not saying that the players that he has in Atlanta are, not good. They are good players. Drake London's had a good year. They have a pair of good running backs. Darnell Mooney's had a good year. Kyle Pitts has had a few games that he's done well in, but not consistent enough. But the Vikings have the superior talent. And Sam Darnold has played well this year. He has definitely earned to get a chance to get paid this offseason. He's going to have a big contract. Not like a $60 million contract, but he's going to get paid this offseason. A team is going to want to sign him, to some kind of multi-year deal. And he deserves it because he has played well. Now, there have been some games where not so much, but overall he's put together a nice season. And when you're surrounded with the talent that, Kirk Cousins used to be surrounded by, except for Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a new piece. And you're in the right system. I mean, I'm not really surprised by how well Darnold has done. It's because you got one of the best receivers in the NFL in Justin Jefferson. You got a decent number 2 in Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson's back. Aaron Jones is still a productive running back. And Kevin O'Connell's a good head coach. And then you're backed behind a good defense. The Vikings have a good roster. I said that before the year started. The Vikings have a very good roster. I just didn't know how the quarterback play was going to be. That's why I didn't really have them winning a lot of games. And also they play in a very tough division. But they have played. Sam Darnold has played well, and that has made the difference. Because, if Nick Mullins is the starting quarterback week 1, I don't think they're 10-2. But it's because Sam Darnold has played well that they're in the position that they're in right now. And they still have a chance at the NFC North. And they have to win this game to keep pace with the Lions, and they'll be going up against a familiar face in Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins finished his Vikings career. He had a passer rating of 101.2 with 23,265 passing yards, 171 touchdowns, and 55 interceptions in 88 games for the Vikings. The Vikings signed him going into the 2018 season, and they didn't make the playoffs. He was okay his first season. 2019, the Vikings ended up making the playoffs, and he picked up his first playoff victory. That was in New Orleans. That was in overtime. He hit that pass to Adam Thielen to set up the game-winning touchdown to Kyle Rudolph. I remember watching that game. And I did say, because I was not a big Kirk Cousins supporter, I think it was because I was a little bit salty of, losing my fantasy championship back in, I think it was 2015, because he played the first half, did really well, and then they benched him, so I had it out for him. But also because everybody said how great he was, but the playoff resume wasn't there. But he did pick up the playoff win against the Saints, and I did say if he did win that game, I would get a Vikings jersey of him, but I never did that. So I didn't keep my word. But 2018, he had 30 touchdowns to 10 picks, so he did have a good season. Then he had 26 touchdowns to 6 picks in 2019. They made the playoffs. 2020, 35 touchdowns to 13 picks. 2021, he had 33 touchdowns to 7 picks. 2022, when they made the playoffs and they were a 12-win team, he had 29 touchdowns to 14 picks. And he was on his way to having a really good season last year, but suffered the Achilles injury. Had 18 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Now, some of the years that they didn't make the playoffs, the Vikings defense was not good. It was not good. He continued to put up big numbers, but remember the game on Christmas when Alvin Kamara had 6 touchdowns? The Vikings put up 30-plus points, but the Saints put up 50-plus points because Kamara had such a big game. He had a solid career with the Vikings, and, I don't know how the rest of his career is going to play out. I guess maybe, next year he'll look a little bit better because he's another year removed from the Achilles injury. I mean, I think that's still a problem. But, I mean, some of the interceptions that he had against against the Chargers were inexcusable. I mean, the one where, again, it was like jackpot. He's throwing it up into the end zone, and you got all these guys around. And, I mean, maybe he was trying to throw it away, but, that got intercepted. The pick six, that was not good. It's just, it has been a disappointing season for Kirk Cousins. It's been an up and down season, but it's been overall disappointing. The Falcons brought him in because they thought he was going to be the one that takes them over the top, because that's what they've been missing these last few years as a quarterback. You have the right skill position players on offense, and they made moves on defense. You got a couple of good safeties back there, a good corner. You brought in Matthew Judon this season, and it's been a disappointment. Now, that doesn't mean that they're out of it. They still got a chance to win this division, but they got some tough games down the stretch here, and that starts with the Vikings, who are one of the best teams in the NFC. And then after that, you still got some more divisional games, but you play the Raiders in Vegas. And again, look, the Raiders are not a good team. They should win that, but you never know. Then you got the Giants, the Commanders, and then the Panthers to finish it off. So, I had them at 10 wins. I think even if you lose this game, you could still get the 10 wins, but it's really going to all come down to how Kirk Cousins plays. If he does not play well, they're not making the playoffs. The Bucs have a lighter schedule coming up. They do have the Chargers at one point, not this week, but next week. So, that's a tough game for the Bucs. And then they got the Cowboys, the Panthers again, and then the Saints. So, I mean, I don't think any of those games are gimmies. I mean, I think they should beat the Raiders this week, although Mike Evans is a little banged up and who knows if he plays or not. He hasn't practiced this week, but maybe they're just giving him rest and being careful with him. But, yeah, I mean, the Bucs got the Chargers, which is tough. Then they're at the Cowboys, which I think they should win, but, Cowboys have been playing better. Give them a little bit of credit. They've been playing somewhat better. Then you got the Panthers who have been playing better, and the Saints have been playing better too. They beat the Bucs in Tampa last year. I brought that up this week. So it's gonna be a tight race. It could take once again 9 wins to win this division. It's just unfortunate for the Bucs because they're 0-2 against the Falcons this year, and had they not lost both games, they'd be in a better spot. But also had a ton of injuries. So we'll see how that all goes, but I'm going to take the Vikings. Back to this game, I'm going to take the Vikings to win this game. I think they win. I'm going to say they win 31-20. I think that's the final score. I just think they're going to give Kirk Cousins a hard time, and I think Kirk Cousins is going to turn the ball over because that's what he's done a lot. I think he will break that streak of not throwing a touchdown pass. I think he gets at least one in this game, but I just think the Vikings are the better team, and that's a hostile environment that he's going into. And he knows because he's played there, played a large portion of his career there. So he knows how that crowd gets. But I just think, they're going to struggle. They're going to have to lean on Bijan Robinson in this game. But, I like the Vikings to win this matchup and cover the spread as well. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game. Do you think Kirk Cousins goes in and pulls off the upset, or do you think the Vikings improve to 11-2 on the season? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will preview another game, and that is the Buffalo Bills taking on the Los Angeles Rams. We'll talk about the implications of that game when we return from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're now going to preview the matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams. This will be taking place at SoFi Stadium, and the Bills are coming in off of that big win over the 49ers, 35-10. The Rams coming off of their win against the Saints, 21-14. Now, the last time these two teams played against each other, this was the opener of the 2022 season. This was the Rams banner ceremony coming off of that Super Bowl win. And after this game, because this is a picture from that game, many people were like, all right, the Bills are going to the Super Bowl this year. And that ended up not happening. And I wanted to go back to that game. The Bills won that game 31-10. They dominated. Josh Allen had 3 touchdown passes in that game, 297 yards passing. He had 2 picks in the game. Matthew Stafford had 3 interceptions in this game. The leading rusher for the Rams was Darrell Henderson. Josh Allen was the leading rusher for the Bills. He also had a rushing touchdown in this game as well. So he's coming off of a 4 touchdown performance against the 49ers. Well, in this game, he had 4 total touchdowns as well, as the Spider-Verse effect happens to my camera again. Also, Stephon Diggs had a big game, 8 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown. He will not be in this game because he is no longer with the Bills. Same thing with Gabe Davis, no longer with the Bills. 4 receptions, 88 yards and a touchdown. And many people thought he was going to have a big year in 2022 after the performance he had in the playoffs against the Chiefs. Also, Jamison Crowder, Zach Moss, Isaiah McKenzie, Devin Singletary. I think the only player that, from the receiving stats that's still on the team is Dawson Knox. That's it. And then in the running game, there's no more Zach Moss, there's no more Devin Singletary, but you still got Josh Allen and you still got James Cook, who only had 1 carry for 2 yards in that game. So, and the Bills defensively, they got to Matthew Stafford a decent amount. They had 7 sacks of Matthew Stafford in that game. And, you kind of worry about that because there's been a couple of games this year where Matthew Stafford just has been under a lot of pressure. Now, a lot of that had to deal with the fact that, the Rams, they just were down a lot of their guys. The offensive line was banged up this year. You also had Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They were out for a decent amount of time. Puka getting hurt in week 1 and Cooper Kupp getting hurt the following week. So, it was a rough stretch for them. But the Rams have climbed back into it, and, they still have a chance at making the playoffs. But I think the path is through the division. I don't know about the wild card. It's going to be tough because the Commanders right now are 8-5. The Rams got to win out and basically get a lot of help, or some help. But, yeah, going back to the game from a couple years ago, Stafford, like I said, had a touchdown, 3 interceptions. He had 240 yards passing. Cooper Kupp was their leading receiver. He had 13 receptions for 128 yards and a touchdown. Rams defense had a couple of sacks in the game of Josh Allen, but the Bills, they were the superior team in that matchup. And that was the beginning of the Rams' downfall that season because that was a disaster of a year for them. Stafford got hurt. Kupp got hurt. I think Aaron Donald also got hurt as well. They lost a lot of guys. And then you had Baker Mayfield come in at one point. They picked him up, and he won that game on that Thursday night against the Raiders. He finished out the year for them, and that's what led to him getting another chance. And now he, found a home in Tampa. So, but the Bills have gone through some changes as well. Like I said, no more Stephon Diggs, no more Gabe Davis, and Josh Allen. It doesn't matter. He right now is the leader to win the MVP. And this is a big game, like I said, for both teams. The Bills, they want to keep pace with the Chiefs for that 1 seed. They already locked up the AFC East with still, a month to go left in the season, which is crazy to think about. But Josh Allen has played well. The defense is starting to get healthier. They actually did pick up Micah Hyde. They brought him back. And, I remember seeing a headline. He said he'd rather, it's either he goes back to Buffalo or he retires. And Buffalo's bringing him back because, they're kind of banged up at the safety spot. Because I think it's because of the injury to Taylor Rapp, because I saw him on the injury report. But regardless, they brought him back in. And, that's a guy that, has been there, like I said. Spent a lot of time in Buffalo between that and Green Bay. So, but like I said, they got Matt Milano back on defense. And Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level. Looking at the comparison between the two teams, the Rams are 10th in passing yards per game. I mean, that's gone up, because they were lower. And since they got Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, Matthew Stafford stats have gone up. And the Bills are actually 19th. The Bills, though, are 11th in rushing yards per game, averaging 127.6. And the Rams are only averaging 100, which is 26 in the NFL. And then points per game, the Bills are second and the Rams are 20th. Defensively, Bills' defense is 7th against the pass. Rams' defense is 17th. And then against the run, Rams are 28th and the Bills are 18th. And then points allowed, the Bills' defense is 6th and the Rams' defense is 21st. Now, I think the Rams' defense has stepped up at times during this stretch here. But they're going to have their hands full with Josh Allen. And we saw a couple weeks ago against Saquon Barkley, they gave up 255 rushing yards to him. And the Eagles ran the ball for over 300 yards in that game. And now you got to deal with Josh Allen and James Cook. I don't think you're going to get 300 yards rushing from the Bills, but stopping the run is going to be a problem for the Rams in this game. And the other thing, too, is protecting Matthew Stafford. Because, we saw against the Dolphins, and against the Eagles pass rush, the Rams struggled a little bit. They couldn't protect Matthew Stafford. And if they're not able to protect him, and even last week, I mean, the Rams got shut out in the first half, which I don't think has ever happened in the McVay era. You can't afford to get off to a slow start against the Bills. You got to be able to keep pace with them. Now, the Rams, I think, have the capability of doing that because of the playmakers that they have on offense. But I just think right now the Bills are the better team. And I think with how Josh Allen is playing, I think it's going to be too much for the Rams to overcome in this game. And even if they lose this game, they still have a chance, but it's going to be tough. 3 of the last 4 games after this game here is against divisional opponents. They got the 49ers next Thursday, and who knows what's going to happen with the Niners this week. They'll be taking on the Bears. You got the Jets the following week, which I think you should win that game, but who knows. And then you got the Cardinals and the Seahawks at home. Like I said, though, I think the best chance for really any team in the NFC West is going to be winning the division. Now, the Rams are only 1 game back of the Seahawks. If the Seahawks end up losing to the Cardinals, then you don't really lose ground with them, even if you do lose this game to the Bills. But then the Cardinals jump to 7-6. But then you have an opportunity to beat both of those teams at home. So, so losing would not be the worst thing for the Rams, but if they do win this game, if they do find a way to win, they would definitely feel better about themselves going into this final stretch here. But like I said, I like the Bills to win this game. They're playing like the better team. I'm going to say it's final score, Bills win 34-23. I'm going to say that's the final score. Josh Allen, I think, has another big game and they get to 11-2, and then we'll see what happens on the Sunday night game when the Chiefs play the Chargers, because I would have felt better about the Chargers if J.K. Dobbins was playing, but the fact that he's on injured reserve and the Chargers really struggle to run the football, it's going to be tough. But the Chargers have a good defense, and the Chiefs have kind of struggled this year, so we'll see what happens. But it's this game has the potential to be good as well, but it could also get ugly where the Bills kind of just take over. Maybe it's one of those games where it's close for a little bit and then the Bills kind of pull away at the end. We'll see what happens. But I have some guys in this game that I need to do well for my fantasy matchups. I need Puka Nacua to have a big game. So we'll see how this game goes when it comes to that. But should be fun. Not as good as, the game from last night, but, has the potential to be good. We'll see what happens. There's some playoff implications there. The Bills, again, they got the division wrapped up. Now they're focused on trying to get home field advantage, which would be huge for them if they can do that. Because I think if the Bills get home field advantage, it's possible this could be the year that they go to the Super Bowl. But we'll see. Anthony Manzano in the chat. He says, any big trades during the deadline you can see happening? Didn't the deadline pass already? The deadline passed. We're past the halfway point of the season. The deadline passed. The Cowboys getting Jonathan Mingo. That was a big trade. No, the deadline passed already. But I don't know why the only trade I thought of was Jonathan Mingo getting traded. Oh yeah, Marshawn Lattimore for the Saints got traded to the Commanders. I think they're going to be getting him back at some point, hopefully. So that would be good for their secondary. Because last year, remember, the secondary for the Commanders was not good. That was one of the reasons why I didn't think the Commanders were going to do that good this year. It was because I just thought, their defense was going to give up a lot of points. And it has at times, but their offense has been very good. Jane Daniels could be winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, which we did talk about this week. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game that we just talked about with the Bills and the Rams. Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the rest of the NFL slate, the early slate of games in the NFL, but we'll also take a look at the conference championship games for this weekend in college football. I'll give you my picks for those games as well. And we'll take a look at the games from last week, how some of them unfolded. We'll talk a little bit about the Michigan-Ohio State game, because I did watch that. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we will now get into talking about the conference championship games in college football, as well as taking a look at the early slate of games for Week 14 in the NFL. But actually, I do want to take you back to last weekend, final week of the regular season in college football. It was rivalry week, and I did watch the Ohio State-Michigan game, and just what a disappointing showing by Ohio State. It was very low scoring. Now, I think I would have taken the points had I put a little bit of a a wager on this game, but I didn't. But I did not expect it to be 13-10. Michigan was a 20.5-point underdog in this game. They won 13-10. There was missed field goals. There was an interception, near the goal line. And then at the end of the game, you had Michigan plant the flag, which happened, across multiple games, and that led to fights. This fight went on for a while with Ohio State and Michigan. But, I do agree with what some people were saying. It's like, hey, you had 4 quarters to make sure that didn't happen, and they didn't do it. And, this hurt Ohio State's ranking in the playoffs. They were the number 2 team, and now they kind of went down a little bit. So, that's a game that they probably should have won, but they ended up not winning it. Right now, they went from 2 down to 6 because of that loss to Michigan. And, this is a Michigan team. There's no Harbaugh. A lot of guys left. And Michigan was able to get the win. So give Michigan credit. And, their quarterback, Davis Warren, had 62 yards passing, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and they still won the game. They almost had 200 yards rushing in this game, which is, what Michigan does. They run the football. Mullings had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. Will Howard actually got hurt in this game, but he came back in. He had only 175 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. They only ran the ball for 77 yards. Just a disappointing performance by Ohio State. And like I said, you had 4 quarters to make sure that, they wouldn't plant the flag at the end of the game. So, you should have played better, and that wouldn't have happened. But they end up losing. That was their second loss of the season. Their only other loss, of course, is to Oregon. And then some of the other games, South Carolina beat Clemson 17-14. Louisville was all over Kentucky, winning 41-14. Alabama beat Auburn 28-14. SMU 38-6. Arizona State beat Arizona 49-7. Penn State, they'll be playing in the Big Ten championship game. They won 44-7 over Maryland. So yeah, Penn State against Oregon, that's a big game. Notre Dame finished at 11-1. They beat USC 49-35. That was a high-scoring game. Florida State finishes their disappointing season, losing 31-11 to Florida. They dropped to 2-10. Oregon was all over Washington. They won 49-21. Texas won a low-scoring game. They beat A&M 17-7. But, so then we move on to the conference championship game. So tonight you got Tulane and Army. Army's a 4.5-point underdog. And then you got the Mountain West Championship, Boise State and UNLV. Now, these 2 teams did play each other earlier in the season, and Boise State won that game. Aston Genty in that game, he had 33 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown. So we'll see what happens in this game. I'll take Boise State, and say that Genty has a big game. Let's see what happens with that. And then Saturday, you got the Big 12 championship game, the SEC championship game, Big 10, and ACC. The Big 10 and the ACC championship game are both being played at the same time. So the Big 12 championship is noon Eastern time between Iowa State and Arizona State. Both teams are 10-2. I think this is the first meeting between these 2 teams, from what I heard. Arizona State is a 1.5-point favorite. That one's definitely tough to pick. I'll take the Cyclones with the points. I'll do that. I'll take the Cyclones with the points. And then we got Georgia and Texas, who met earlier this year, and Georgia won that game. I'm going to say Texas gets revenge and they win this game, but it's going to be close. It's going to be close. I'll take Texas. Penn State and Oregon. Oregon's been the best team all year. Penn State's got a good defense. But I'll say Oregon gets the win. And then SMU and Clemson. For the ACC championship, I'll take SMU. But we'll see what happens. I'll make sure to try to pay close attention to these games. I definitely, I'm looking forward to them. Georgia and Texas, I want to watch. Penn State and Oregon, I definitely want to watch that as well. So we'll see what happens. The Texas-Georgia game's definitely, that one's a very tough game to pick. Anthony also in the chat said, do you think Bama deserves to be ahead of Miami with 3 losses? See, the thing with that is Miami, some games like this year, some of their wins, they barely got by. And I just kind of looked at them as maybe not being as good of a team as maybe we thought. I think it's because of the pedigree of Alabama. It's like, the committee doesn't want to leave them out. That's, I think what most people are saying. It's because it's Alabama. You don't want to leave Alabama out, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. And then he also said it's like the committee completely overlooked the fact Alabama was blown out by Oklahoma at home the week prior, and they hold a 3-point loss at Syracuse against Miami a lot harder. Yeah, I mean, that's the unfortunate thing is, it's kind of out of our hands, and it's that you got a committee deciding who's in and who's out, but that's what they decided. And they did lose to Vanderbilt too, 40-35. Yeah, no, I mean, maybe Miami deserved a better chance. I mean, their offense was elite this year, but, you lose to Georgia Tech at the end of the season. You lose to Syracuse. I mean, yeah, no, I guess they just didn't want to leave Alabama out, so that's why they put them ahead. So, I'm happy Indiana was still in it because I thought after that loss to Ohio State, I thought they were going to just leave them out. But no, they're still in at 1 loss, so good for them. But yeah, it's definitely controversial. You're not going to make everybody happy with some of the decisions. So I just hope the playoffs are good. Let's see how this new format goes. But big games this weekend. And then let's get into the early slate of games in the NFL. So the Giants and the Saints. Giants coming in at 2-10. Saints are 4-8. Giants are 4.5-point underdogs. I really don't know what to do with this game. This is a game I think I could see the Giants winning, but now Dexter Lawrence is out for the year. The Giants are just trying to wrap up this season. The Saints are still, playing hard. I think the Saints win this game and cover, although I don't have full confidence in that. Then we got the Steelers and the Browns. We had the snow game from a couple weeks ago. Browns are getting a lot of points in this game. I'm going to take the Browns with the points. I don't feel great about that either, but I do think the Steelers get revenge and they win this game. Russell Wilson coming off of that 400-yard performance against the Bengals. But yeah, I like the Steelers to win, but I like the Browns to cover. I did already talk about the Vikings and the Falcons. I did like the Vikings winning and covering. Now you got the Jets against the Dolphins. Dolphins are 5.5-point favorites. I think the Dolphins are going to dismantle the Jets in this game, kind of like what they did last year. I think Tua's going to have a big game. I think, the running game with the Dolphins is going to give the Jets a problem. The Jets defense has not been as good as it was, and Aaron Rodgers, he hasn't been good either. I think this could be a game similar to how also it was against the Cardinals earlier this season. So I like the Dolphins to win and cover in that matchup. This one's interesting. The Eagles are 13-point favorites against the Panthers. Now, the reason why I say it's interesting is because it's a lot of points, and the Panthers could cover that because they've been playing better. But the Eagles right now look like one of the best teams in football. Their defense has been playing really well. Saquon Barkley, is one of the candidates for MVP behind Josh Allen. I think this is the game where, the Panthers kind of come back down to earth and the Eagles, win by a couple of scores here and cover the number. They're at home. So I'll take the Eagles, although the number is pretty big. But I think the Eagles will win by a couple of scores here. And then we got the Raiders and the Bucks. We'll see what happens with Mike Evans. Maybe he does play. I do like the Raiders to cover here. I think they could at least keep it within the 6.5. The Bucs are still, they're getting healthier, but they're still a little bit banged up. Baker Mayfield's a little banged up as well. Aiden O'Connell didn't play that bad. Actually, no, not only did not play that bad, but he played pretty good against the Chiefs. So I think they could keep it close. Actually, I think he popped up on the injury report. So, I mean, if he doesn't play and Desmond Ritter's playing, well, then I might change my mind. But I do like the Bucs to win, but I do like the Raiders to cover. Oh, I might be wrong, actually. No, he is questionable. Oh, no, because he's dealing with an illness. So I think he should play. So I like the Bucs to win, like I said, but I like the Raiders to cover. Also, some more comments from Anthony in the chat. He says, what scares me is, let's say SMU loses to Clemson by 3 points, gets screwed in, Alabama still goes in. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. And then he says, I don't trust the Dolphins. Sorry, holding back a sneeze. Yeah, but again, do you trust the Jets? They're playing against the Jets. So, the Jets just have not been, they have been a massive disappointment. And, I thought when Tua got hurt, I thought, okay, well, maybe the Jets can at least finish in second place. They couldn't even do that. Tua comes back and they're in third right now. And they have a chance to finish in last place. I mean, what if the Patriots pass them? So, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, so I like the Dolphins, like I said, the Vikings, the Eagles, the Raiders. And then this one, I don't really know what to do. You got Mac Jones and the Jaguars with no Trevor Lawrence taking on the Titans in Nashville. Titans are 3.5-point favorites. I don't really trust either of these teams. I mean, the Titans have been playing better. I mean, they did get blown out by the Commanders. But, they're at home, so, maybe they win and cover. But, again, this is another game where I just don't really know what to do. So those are my predictions for the early slate. Let me know what you guys think. We're going to take our final break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will take a look at the other matchups for this weekend, including Chargers-Chiefs on Sunday night, and that will take us to the end and bring us to the weekend. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the final few games here for the Week 14 slate in the NFL. So we will start off with a NFC West matchup. We have the Seattle Seahawks, the first place Seattle Seahawks, taking on the 6-6 Arizona Cardinals. Now, these two teams met a couple weeks ago in Seattle, and the Seahawks won that game 16-6. Now this game is in Arizona, and you're kind of hoping for a better performance out of Kyler Murray because he was not good in that game. The Seahawks are coming off of a couple of wins, obviously against the Cardinals, like I just said, and also against the Jets last week, where the special teams was not great, but they still managed to win the game. The defense has been playing good. Now, the line dropped down to 2.5. I did, in my spread pool, it's 3.5, so I took the Seahawks with the points. But I think this could be, I think this is going to be a close game. I think Kyler Murray will definitely play better than he did in that matchup when they last met. Hopefully Marvin Harrison Jr. can have a big game. I'm looking for James Conner to have a big game because the last two games have kind of been quiet. They gave him a new contract, so I'm looking to see if he can bounce back here. But, yeah, no, this game's going to be close. And, yeah, I don't really know. I mean, it is a toss-up. I think the Cardinals, I'll say the Cardinals win by 3. I'll say they win by 3. This game stays close. Also, it depends on how Geno Smith plays. Geno Smith's kind of been up and down this year. So, we'll see. The Seahawks, actually, they're second in passing yards per game. The Cardinals are 24th. And then rushing yards per game, the Cardinals are 6th, and the Seahawks are 28th. And you would think that would be a little bit higher because they have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, but, yeah, no, that's not the case. And then both teams are middle of the pack in points per game. Seahawks are 15th, and the Cardinals are 17th. And then points allowed, their defenses are around the same. Cardinals are 11th, and the Seahawks are 12th. So, yeah, I like the Cardinals to get even with the Seahawks. They win by 3 points. I'll take the Cardinals to split the season series. Then we got the Bears and the 49ers. So the 49ers are 4-point favorites. Bears coming in off of that, that last drive where, they could have tied it, but they just mishandled the clock, that whole fiasco. 49ers coming off of that blowout loss to the Bills, and they the last 2 weeks they have been outscored, if my math is right. They have been outscored 73-20 in their last 2 games. And it looks like their season's over. Now, they still have a chance. Their last 5 games here, including this one, are going to be tough. The Bears have been playing better. This is going to be their first game without Matt Eberflus. Then you got the Rams next Thursday, the Dolphins after that, the Lions, and the Cardinals. And, the status of Nick Bosa, he's still questionable. Maybe he comes back this week. Well, he didn't practice on Thursday, so the odds of him coming back aren't that good. But who knows? But, yeah, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. I mean, especially now to their running back room where, Jordan Mason was placed on IR. Christian McCaffrey was placed on IR. So you got Isaac Guerrero. They got a Benaconda from the Jets. You also have Patrick Taylor, who they promoted from the practice squad. It's not looking good right now for the Niners. But I think this is a game where they get back on track. They have lost 3 games in a row. It's time to end this losing streak here. All right? Get back on track, get a win, and then go into Thursday night against the Rams and see what happens. This team still has that playoff pedigree. They have that experience. Their backs are against the wall. They got beat up last week. Now, again, if Nick Bosa doesn't play, that changes things with the defense. I mean, look at how the defense has played without him. It's been poor. But I think against the Bears, maybe, you could pick up a win here. You got an interim head coach. I don't know. I like the 49ers to win and cover, although I don't feel great about it because the Bears have been playing better. They have been playing better. And, they do have a lot of playmakers on offense, but like I said, I think the Niners are due to win and end this losing streak. So I'm going to take the Niners to win and cover, although I don't feel great about it. And then we got the Sunday night game between the Chargers and the Chiefs. Now, the line went from 3. It's moved up to 4 now. The Chargers are without J.K. Dobbins, and they struggled to run the football last week against the Falcons. But you know what? The Chiefs have not covered. They just have not covered. They've only covered as winners. They've only covered in 2 games. That was against the Saints and the 49ers. Other than that, Teams backdoor against them. So, you know what? I like the Chargers with their defense. Their defense travels. So I like the defense in this matchup to kind of hold down the Chiefs' offense a little bit. And, you know what? I think Justin Herbert will make his fair share of plays in this game. He has 13 touchdowns to 1 pick. Now, you'd like to see the touchdowns higher, of course. But only having 1 interception on the year is very impressive. So, I don't know if the Chargers win. I may take them to upset the Chiefs. But I think if J.K. Dobbins, like I said, if he was playing in this game, I would have felt better about it. But I think the Chargers will at least cover. But I think it's going to be one of those, close games. Might be a little low scoring. It might be like a 20-17 game, something like that. It was 17-10 the last time these teams met. So I like the Chargers to keep it close, but I think the Chiefs, they find a way to get another win. I said it might be a 3-point game. You might end up seeing a game-winning field goal by the Chiefs and send them to 12 wins on the year. But we'll see what happens. It's just unfortunate the J.K. Dobbins injury, and also, the receivers are struggling to create some separation. You got guys that are injured, but also drops. The drops have really been a big problem with Quentin Johnston these last couple weeks. Lad McConkey being hurt, that doesn't help. But I think the Chargers will find a way to keep this game close. It's always fun when Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert match up against each other. Game is usually pretty good. So we'll see what happens. But I like the Chiefs to win, but I think the Chargers cover as of right now. So to kind of run through my picks, so I like the Dolphins to win and cover, the Vikings to win and cover, the Saints to win and cover, Eagles to win and cover, the Browns to cover but the Steelers win, Raiders to cover but the Bucks win, Titans to win and cover, Seahawks to cover but the Cardinals win, Bills to win and cover, Niners to win and cover, and then the Chiefs to win but the Chargers cover. So we'll see what happens. I did take a lot of favorites. So, again, there could be some tweaking this weekend, and maybe I, change a few games around. But we'll have to wait and see. But, that is pretty much it for the show for today. This is going to be a big football weekend, both in college and in the NFL. We get closer to the NFL playoffs, and we'll see how that all shapes out as my camera continues to malfunction here today. I apologize for the technical issues today, but that's what happens. It is what it is. And at least I have a backup camera. I use my laptop camera in case this happens. But I just wish it wouldn't happen. But it is what it is, like I said. But yeah, big football weekend with the championship games, and we'll see how everything looks when it comes to the playoff pictures when we come back next week. But yeah, we only got a couple months left of football, including the NFL playoffs and then the Super Bowl, and then that's it. And then we're in the off season. So I felt like last off season took forever, but yeah, no, we're getting to that point. And that's how fast the season goes. It gets here and then it just blows right by you. So got to enjoy these last weeks that we have, these last couple months while we still have it. But then it'll be back, of course, and then we go through the same thing again. But yeah, no, I'm curious to see how some of these games go. Last night got us off to a good start with the Packers and the Lions. We'll see how Kirk Cousins does in his return to Minnesota. Steelers, Browns. Let's see if Jameis could put on an encore performance, because he threw for almost 500 yards, but he had 3 turnovers in the game. We'll see if Russell Wilson has a good encore performance. He threw for over 400 yards. So both quarterbacks going in, coming off of their previous performances of 400 yards passing. So I don't think we're going to get that. But I'm like I said, a couple of things I'm doing with my main league in fantasy. So I'm going to be starting 2 tight ends this week, and I will also be starting the Steelers defense against Jameis, because I'm not starting Kirk Cousins after how he's played. I think Brock Purdy's going to play better against the Bears being at home. So I'm starting Jameis because Jameis will throw a couple of touchdown passes, but he also will turn the ball over. So, it'll help the defense, but, Jameis also scoring touchdown passes, that helps me as well. So that's how I'm going about it, is Jameis will be able to put up points, but he'll turn the ball over. The Steelers will sack him a couple times, and everybody wins there. And also, starting the 2 tight end set this week, I got George Kittle and Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith has been pretty good as of late, and he's going up against the Jets, so I think that's a good matchup. And I think George Kittle bounces back after, a one-catch performance against the Bills in that snow game. So that's kind of my way of thinking. So we'll see. Josh Jacobs got me off to a great start last night in that league because he had 3 touchdowns, could have had 4, but we don't want to get greedy. So we just got to hope that, I win this week, and then hopefully, once I do that, I win next week and I make the playoffs at least in that league. So at least in 2 out of the, 5 leagues that I'm in, I make the playoffs. So, we'll see. I'm not done yet, but I got to win out. It's going to be tough. So we'll see. So wish me luck. And, make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the games this weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Monday. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and